Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshulamitanjena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaye Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadabhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam Pravajantam Anupeta Apeta Krityam Apayano Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putreti Tan Maitaya Taravo Binedus Tam Sarvabhutam Hridayam Munimanatosmi Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Vaktya Vihina Parada Lakshai Diptashtakamari Tarangamadye Kripamai Tvam Sharanam Prapanna Brinde Namaste Charanada Vindam Tavevasmi Najivami Tvayavina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayanam Charanandike Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. So we're going to continue hearing the beautiful Bhajana Rahasya by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and we begin by offering our most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of our beloved Gurus, unto Sri Guru Pada Padma Nityalita Bhavishta Om Vishnu Pada Sto Tatsat Sri Srimad Abhaya Charnaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada, and unto Sri Guru Pada Padma Nityalita Bhavishta Om Vishnu Pada Sto Tatsat Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, and unto our exalted Rupa Nuga Guru Varga, all the assembled Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis. So yesterday we're hearing verses which establish the supremacy of Sri Harinam and the effects of Sri Harinam compared to the paths of Gyan and Karma. Right? And now we're going to hear more about the effects of Sri Harinam. And we're beginning with text 16. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that the blazing fire of material existence is extinguished by Nam Sankirtan. And he quotes Srimad Bhagavatam, second chapter of the 6th canto, verse 46. And this is a part of the conversation between the Jamadutas and the Vishnu Dutas, arguing over the fate of Ajamil, right? So, Na tat param karmani bandha kirtanam mumukshatam tirtha padanu kirtanat nayat puna karma susajjate mano rajastamo bhyam kalilam tatonyata. For those who desire liberation from the bondage of this material existence, there is no other means than chanting the name of Bhagavan, who sanctifies even the holy places by the touch of his lotus feet. This Nam Sankirtan is able to destroy the root cause of all sinful activities, because when the mind has taken shelter of Bhagavan, it will never again be caught by fruitive activities. By taking shelter of any atonement other than the name of Bhagavan, the heart will remain affected by the modes of passion and ignorance, and sins will not be destroyed at the root. There's no commentary here. I'm assuming that later on there'll be more commentary about a number of different verses. But just to touch on a couple of the main points of this verse, it is about, first of all, it says there's no other means to achieve liberation from material existence than the chanting of the holy name. Because all these other processes of purification, they may relieve you of the future reaction to the sinful activity, but they won't remove the root desire the root cause of the sinful activity, the beej that exists within the heart that's not yet matured and ripened. When we perform materialistic activities, any material activity, a seed is created. And that seed rests in the heart. It may rest for hundreds of lifetimes, or it may grow and manifest quickly. But in any case, it starts there. And then as it begins to mature, it takes the form of almost maturing, and then it takes the form of a desire. Right? We have many desires in our heart for activities we may not have performed yet. You may experience that in your lifetime. When you're very young, they say children are quite innocent, right? Because they just got these little bodies, nothing's really developed yet. But as they begin to grow, all of a sudden new and different kinds of desires manifest in their minds, in their hearts, right? And that's true throughout our lifetime, that there may be things that we've not done yet, even desires we haven't considered, they begin to show and manifest. And this is from past activities. It may be activities in this life, or it may be activities in previous lives. But these other processes of prayaschitta and atonement don't get to that root, whereas the chanting of the holy name will destroy even sins at the root. And in text 17, Bhaktivinoda Thakur quotes the Padma Purana, Sakrid u charitam jaina harir ityakshara dvayam bada parikarastena mokshaya gamanam prati. A person who even once chants the two syllables ha and re easily attains liberation. And you go, what? How could that be? But you may remember the story of Haridas Thakur visiting the place of Govardhan and Hiranya, the uncles of Raghunath Das, and Haridas Thakur was there. And Haridas Thakur was speaking, and he said, even the semblance of the holy name is sufficient to give one liberation. And there was one Brahmana there, I think it was Gopal Chapala, or it could have been Gopal Chakravarti. There are two Gopals. One committed offense to Srivas and one to Haridas. I think it was Chapala. Anyway, he said, what? This is crazy. How can you say that? He didn't have that developed faith in the holy name. He said, this can't be, that just a semblance of the holy name can give the great fruit of liberation. This is wrong. And he was so adamant, and he said that if you're right, then my nose will fall off. And if I'm right, then your nose will fall off. In other words, you'll get leprosy or I'll get leprosy. And everyone was aghast that this so-called Brahmana had the temerity to speak to the exalted Haridas in that way. And they kicked him out. He had been in the sort of the employ as a Brahmin in that house, but they said, oh, you can no longer be here. And within a few days, he got terrible, terrible leprosy. And then later, by the mercy of Mahaprabhu and by his own remorse, he was freed from that. But this was proof. Even the semblance of the holy name can give liberation. Then the next verse, Jandra Mukhe Ekabara Namanrityakar. Oh, no, wait. That's Bhaktivinoda Thakur's verse. I'll read it anyway. Namanrityakare Moksha Shuka Anayase Payase Nare. Now, text 18. The holy name is like the moonlight that causes the white lotus of all auspiciousness to blossom. So here he's giving evidence for these different stages. We'd heard in summary about the effects, right? Cheto darpanamarjanam, cleansing the heart. Bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam, removing all material miseries and the cycle of samsara. Shrirat Kairava Chandrikavi Tadanam, right? The white lotus of all auspiciousness to blossom. What's the evidence of that? Madhura Maduram Etan Mangalam Mangalanam Sakala Nigamavali Satpalam Chit Sarupam Sakurdapi Parigitam Shrudaya Helayava Brigu Varanara Matram Tarayat Krishna Nama. The holy name is the most auspicious of all that is auspicious, and the sweetest of all that is sweet. It is the fully ripened transcendental fruit of all the creepers of the Shrutis. O best of the Brigu dynasty, if a person even once chants the name of Krishna without offense, be it with faith or indifferently, that chanting will deliver him from the bondage of material existence. Right? So, better to chant with faith and knowledge, the fruits are even greater, but even if one is chanting indifferently, unconsciously, meaning something else, right, different points, that if he's not misusing the holy name, not trying to exploit the power of the holy name, but just chants it, even without any real knowledge or faith, it says you'll be delivered from the bondage of material existence. What does that mean? Immediately? Not necessarily, but the path has begun, right? You will, at some point, now you've begun. You're chanting the holy name. So, text 19. The holy name, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, is the life of all transcendental knowledge, which is compared to a wife, Vadhu. This is supported by the following verse from the Garuda Purana. Vidya Vadhu Jivanam, the next part of Mahaprabhu's verse. Yad ichasi param jnanam jnanad yat paramam padam tadadarena Rajendra Kuru Govinda Kirtanam. O best of the kings, if you desire to obtain the topmost knowledge and the supreme goal of that knowledge, Prema Bhakti, then chant the holy name of Sri Govinda with great respect and devotion. Garuda Purana, O best of kings, if you desire to obtain the topmost knowledge and the supreme goal of that knowledge, Prema Bhakti, then chant the holy name of Sri Govinda with great respect and devotion. Right? So many evidences. Then Bhaktivinoda Thakur says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 3rd canto, 5th chapter, the demigods speak the following. Dhatur yad asmin bhava isha jivas tapatrayena bihita na sharma atman labante bhagavan stavangri chayam savidyam at ashrayema. O Vidata, O Lord, O Paramatma, in this material world, the living entities, overwhelmed by the threefold miseries, cannot find any peace. Therefore, O Bhagavan, we take shelter of the shade of your lotus feet, which are full of knowledge. Okay. So now there's a commentary by Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. He says, the demigods are praying at the lotus feet of Bhagavan. O Lord, the jiva is experiencing the auspicious and inauspicious fruits of lifetimes of karma. Know that, in our lifetimes. You can't even imagine how many lifetimes of karma. Jai Jai Shri Shri Radha Radhamanju Ki Jai Shrimati Lalita Shrimati Vishaka Shri Rupa Manjari Shri Bhakti Manjari Srila Prabhupada Srila Gurudev Ki Jai. By the management of Maya, he continues, he is wandering, that is the jiva, is wandering around in the forest of material existence, overwhelmed by suffering. The jiva is endeavoring to find relief from these threefold miseries, sometimes through knowledge and renunciation, and sometimes through knowledge of Brahman. But he is unable to find peace. By obtaining liberation, he wants to become as if inert, unable to feel anything, just as stones immersed in water cannot feel the pleasure of being in water. Because let me finish the purport. Transcendental peace, parashanti, is attained at Sri Hari's lotus feet. By following the path of bhakti, the living entity becomes immersed in an ocean of transcendental peace and bliss. Thus, to take shelter of your lotus feet is the only means to attain this para shanti. Right, because the sense of peace and relief that you get from impersonal liberation, which if you're actually situated in that Brahmajyoti, you are in your spiritual form, but you're still in your seed form. And you're relieved of all material interaction, and thus you're relieved of all that distress. And that seems like a great pleasure. There is a sense of ananda in that state, but it's very undeveloped. Because real ananda comes from the combination of Samvit and Ladini Shakti, knowing who you are, knowing what's your relationship with Bhagavan. This is the Samvit, the knowledge. This is what real knowledge is. Knowing the spiritual world, knowing your identity, knowing your friends, your relatives, your service, right? Your relationship with Krishna and all his associates. And bathing in the Ladini of loving exchange. The happiness that one gets by giving love and receiving love. The other is just relief from misery. And in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, in that the conference that we've referenced before, organized by Gopakumar, who at that point was in the identity of Brahma, he called all the Vedas there to speak and give their conception of the absolute truth, highest prayojana, the highest prospect for the living entity. And many of the Upanishads were speaking of this impersonal Brahman. Srimad Bhagavatam was very impatient with their descriptions, and he was going to leave the assembly, not wanting to hear such nonsense, but Gopakumar requested him very humbly to speak, and he did. And he compared that Brahman to sleep. He said it's like spiritual sleep. He says, in sleep in this world, we get a sense of great relief and pleasure, right? Everybody looks forward to that time at the end of the day. Whatever you've done, you're tired, you've done this and that, so many interactions. And the idea of putting your head on the pillow and going to sleep is very appealing, right? It just, oh, yes. Oh. Because then, no more stress, no more interaction, nobody's bothering you, nobody's doing this, nobody's doing that. And if you can sleep without dreaming, even better. Because dreams are a kind of mental processing of everything that goes on. And they're also aggravating sometimes too, right? And even when they give pleasure, what is that pleasure? You wake up and go, oh, that thing that you had, it's no longer there, it disappears. So there's no happiness in the dream state either. But if you can just go to sleep and just be completely zonked out, people ask you, oh, how was your sleep? Oh, it's great. I don't remember anything. I think I just slept right through, no disturbance. Srimad Bhagavatam, that's what Brahman is like, on a higher level, but still that same concept. It's not positive pleasure, it's just relief from misery. And really, all of the pleasures that we experience in this world are really the relief of distress. There's a story of, I think it was Akbar. What was his Birbal, his court jester, the joker. And I think it was Akbar, it might have been another king. Anyway, he was saying, he just had a son. And he, the king, and he was saying, oh, this is the greatest happiness I've ever had. This is so wonderful. And the jester says, it's not so wonderful. He goes, what are you talking about? He's angry, the king, my son, I'm a king, now I have a son, my dynasty, everything you work for as a king, I want to have a son, Anyway, he had a son, so he's so happy. And he says, oh, that's not the greatest pleasure. And he goes, well, what is? Well, I can't tell you, but I could show you. Okay, what do you want? He says, well, let's take a ride on your barge. Okay, we'll take a ride on the barge. And we want to have a big feast before that. So they have a big, big feast, right? Huge meal. Then they get on the barge, and they're going down the river, right? Jamuna. And because they had a big meal, and at a certain time of the day, the king is feeling pushing in his body, and he's got to relieve himself. It's got this enormous pushing. He's just got to pass stool. And he says, I got to pass stool and pull over. He says, well, we can't pull over here. You can't do it in the river because everybody knows that's an offense. But here it's too muddy. You can't, there's no place to pull the barge. Oh, over here there's crocodiles. Can't go over here. And there's one obstacle. Oh, the roots are there. We can't. And it was taking a long time to find a proper place. Meanwhile, the pressure was building. And the king thought, oh, he's going to go in his clothes. He just barely, his eyes are turning brown. He's so filled, So then finally, they find a place to pull over. The king leaps off the boat, runs to the shore, finds a place, and he goes, ah, and the jester says, oh, now that's pleasure, isn't it? And he goes, yes, you're right, this is the greatest pleasure. But what is that pleasure? Just to be relieved from that horrible, horrible pushing and anxiety. And hunger, right? Is it really the pleasure of the food? Yes, to some extent. But once you're full, the taste of that food no longer makes you happy. In fact, it can produce the opposite effect. You've eaten so much, oh, I can't eat anymore. Well, that which formerly gave you pleasure now is a source of distress. Oh, no, nothing more. No. All the pleasures of this world, are like that. They're pushings, and the relief of that pushing is pleasure. So one who can tolerate those pushings, vacho vegam, manasa, krodha vegam, right? Jiva vegam, udara pasta vegam, right? All these pushings, even the desire to talk. Oh, I got to talk. There's no one to talk to. Ladies are especially like that. They got to have somebody to talk to. Every day they got to talk. They got to be heard, and they got to listen. It's part of their life. Men, we have our different pushings, but talking, and the desire to just talk some nonsense. It's a pushing, right? The mind, all the disturbances of the mind. I got to talk about that. I got to, engage that. Anger. How dare you? Do you know who I am? Anyway, all these different pushings. But if you can tolerate that and not be controlled by that, that's a very high state. Very high state. That's the minimal state to be a guru or a teacher, right? That's the minimal state. But if you can come to that, to really control, but how do you control? Not, again, we're hearing this, not simply by withdrawal and renunciation of these things, but if you are positively engaged in service, your tongue for chanting, your tongue for taking Krishna Prasad, your body, your senses for engaging in work, right? Whatever it is, then that's real renunciation. That's real renunciation. So then, Bhaktivinoda Thakur quotes Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, 29th chapter, 49th verse, Savidya tan matir yaya. Knowledge is that by which one's attention is concentrated upon Bhagavan. And Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana says, Bhagavan has, how many potencies or energies does Bhagavan have? How many energies does he have? How many potencies? Good question. When you think about that, what would you think? He says here, Bhagavan has only one potency, Shakti, which has two functions, knowledge and ignorance. Yogamaya, so knowledge is vidya, ignorance is avidya. He has Swarup Shakti, but Swarup Shakti includes all these other subdivisions. But he has one Shakti, Srimati Radhika, and she manifests in so many varieties of ways. But the two main divisions, Yogamaya is knowledge, and Mahamaya is ignorance. Mahamaya is responsible for the creation of the material world, and she covers the living entity's eternal identity and inherent qualities. So right now, Mahamaya is covering us, no doubt. The word vidya is derived from the verbal root vid, to know, or to understand. In other words, vidya is that through which one can know service to Krishna. Samvid, right? Service to Krishna. When Shuddha Bhakti arises in the heart of the sadhak by his continuous performance of hearing and chanting, at that time, Bhakti Devi removes his ignorance and dispels all desires other than to attain the service of Bhagavan. By Vidya Vritti, the function of knowledge, she destroys the jiva's coverings in the form of his gross and subtle bodies, and simultaneously manifests his pure spiritual body according to his inherent nature, Swarup. The life of this transcendental knowledge, Vidya, which is compared to a wife, is the holy name of Krishna. This Vidya fixes a person's mind at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked Roy Ramananda, Prabhu kahe kahun Vidya, Vidya madhya sar, Roya kahe Krishna bhakti, Vina Vidya nahiyar. That's from the 8th chapter of the Madhya Leela, the extraordinary conversation between Ramananda Roy and Mahaprabhu. This is towards the end of the chapter, after Ramananda Roy has explained so many things, and the topmost devotees, their topmost practice, the means of coming to the association and guidance of the gopis. And then Mahaprabhu asked a series of questions. And in this question he says, which is the most important of all fields of knowledge? And Roy Ramananda replied, except for Krishna Bhakti, no other education is important. That's a very profound statement, actually, because we who are still caught up in avidya, while we're growing, while we're interacting, we place so much importance on mundane education, mundane acquisition, achievement, and we even think that that will help us in our bhakti. Oh, I go to school, I learn this, I learn that. All of that could help you in your material activities, in your material duties, but it has nothing to do with bhakti. And we have so many examples of our acharyas. Haridas Thakur, did he have any formal education? Do we know anything about that? No. Gorkishoras Babaji Maharaj, the guru of the most learned personality in the history of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, along with Jiva Goswami, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, took as his guru Gorkishoras Babaji, who also had no formal education, was not known to be lettered or literate in any way, and yet he could speak profoundly on all the scripture and understanding the conclusions of the scripture with no form, because he was enlightened from within. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayantite. To those who are constantly engaged in worshiping me with love, bhajatam priti purvakam, right? To them, I enlighten them from within and give them knowledge from within, right? That kind of person. But that kind of person who's doing bhajan with deep, deep affection. Not just ordinary sadhana bhakti in the preliminary stages of the Kanishta devotee or even the Madhyam devotee, although the Madhyam has much higher realization and is approaching. But until we come to Bhav and progress through the Dasha Bhavs, the 5 the stages, where we ultimately come to realize our spiritual identity and our service, then all these things come into the heart, right? Evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. In the second chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, there's a whole progression of stages that begins with Shrinvatam. Well, actually it begins Shushusho Shadadanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punyatirtha Nishevana. By doing service and associating and hearing from great souls, then one gets the proclivity, the interest in hearing about Bhagavan, right? And actually an appreciation and an awakening taste. And then a series of verses, Trinvatam Svakata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana, Hridyantak Stohya Bhadrani, Viranoti Saritsatam, Nasta Prayesva Bhadreshu, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, Bhagavat Uttama Shloke, Bhakti Bhavati Naistaki. These verses, Srila Prabhupada always quoted these, all of our acharyas. Hearing, right, and serving great devotees, right? One becomes fixed in bhakti. The obstacles become removed. We heard about Mahamaya covers us, Yogamaya delivers us. In the in-between stage, while we're performing bhakti, that Mahamaya, whose main job is to take the conditioned souls, throw them into this world, cover them with this false ego, this conception that I am this body and these things of this world are mine to enjoy. When she sees the living entity inclined to perform service, then she helps that living entity. And the energy of gross ignorance and the inclinations to enjoy from passion are gradually replaced with the influence of the material mode of goodness, which is a stage of enlightenment, inclination towards knowledge, control of the senses, qualities like generosity, compassion, restraint that can assist you in bhakti. These things she gives you and helps you because she's a servant. She's an expansion of Yogamaya. And so she will help us, just as again in Brihad-bhagavatamrita, the Asami Brahmana was helped, right, by Durga. He was worshiping, and she assisted him by saying, "Oh, why are you worshiping me for these material things?" Somewhere in his life, his family had originally been from Vrindavan. He may or may not have been from Vrindavan himself. He ended up there, right? But she gave him mantra and sent him to Vrindavan. Many, many examples of that, right, where that same Mahamaya will actually assist. So, except for Krishna Bhakti, there is no other kind of education that is important. Okay, so one more verse. Okay, so then the chanting of the holy name expands the ocean of transcendental bliss, continuing to substantiate Mahaprabhu's prayer with Vedic evidence. He quotes 8th canto, 3rd chapter. Oh, this is Gajendra, Srimad Bhagavatam. Ekantino yasya na kanchanartam vanchanti yevai bhagavat prapanna atyadbhutam tach charitam sumangalam gayanta ananda samudra magna. The devotees who are exclusively surrendered unto Bhagavan and who have no other desire than to attain him become immersed in an ocean of bliss by performing Sankirtan of his wonderful and supremely auspicious pastimes. And Srila Gurudev says in this connection, this text comes from Gajendra's prayers to Bhagavan when Gajendra was being attacked by the crocodile. The sadhak will also realize Bhagavan in his heart by constantly chanting the holy name. Sri Krsna Sankirtan unlimitedly expands the jiva's inherent transcendental pleasure by virtue of the essential function of the Hladini Shakti. Transcendental pleasure, right? Hladini Shakti. But what is that pleasure from? Who is the source of this Hladini Shakti? It's Srimati Radhika herself, Mahabhav Swarupini. She's a very embodiment, personification of that Hladini Shakti. And what is her nature? Her nature is that complete absorption in the pleasure giving and service to Sri Krishna. And she endows all living entities who are engaged in the service of Krishna with that same pleasure. Remember, we heard the other day, do we hear it here, or was I reading it in Jaiva Dharma? But the question comes up, how can the living entity who is so minute be said to be able to experience unlimited bliss if the living entity is minute? Right? If we're so tiny, 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 and just a fragment of the qualities of the Lord are inherent within us, including a fragment of Sat, Chit, Ananda. But the answer is that we are minute, but coming into connection with the Lord, with Radha and Krishna, because they are one, then we become immersed in that unlimited ocean of Hladini. We're limited, but that ocean is not. So when the jiva attains his pure spiritual form, he experiences unlimited bliss. In this condition, he is eternally situated in one of the transcendental rasas, Dasya Sakya, Vatsalya, or Madhurya. And he relishes complete nectar at every step by virtue of the ever-increasing freshness of his attachment to Sri Krishna. Nava Navaya Yamanana Anurag. There you are. So all these verses. And Gajendra, interesting example, because Gajendra, what was he doing before the crocodile attacked him? He was the king of elephants. He was swimming in this Indradumna Sarovara, right? Or Indra Sarovara, just enjoying with his female elephants. And then the crocodile attacked him. And he was so powerful. Normally, nothing could thwart him. But this crocodile was also very powerful. And they were in the water, which was the place of the crocodile, right? And he couldn't get out. And they battled for 1,000 years. And then finally, Gajendra, realizing his strength is sapping, realized, I am helpless in this regard. I had so much pride in my strength and my ability, and now I see it's useless. But in that struggle also, he had other realizations, and he realized, oh, what have I been doing my whole life? Now my life's about to end, so what is my purpose? And he took with his trunk and he plucked a beautiful lotus from that lake, and he offered it to the Lord. And he didn't even pray to be saved. He just said, oh, now I understand devotion to you is my only real object. Now you can do with me what you like. I surrender to you. So the Lord put him in that position just to accelerate his devotion, right? And so that's how we have to think. I don't know about you, but I'm constantly beset, not always by physical trauma, but by mental trauma and fear. All my internal paranoias, coming to me and my mind, and at night, and going, what if this, happens, and then I think, what would I do if that actually happened? Because so many horrible things that happen to people in this world. And mine always revolve around claustrophobia. Like there's so many horrible tortures that I used to do, locking people in coffins and burying them alive, and the stuff like that. I just go, Edgar Allan Poe stories of people being buried alive. You ever heard the term dead ringer? You know what that is? That means somebody's buried alive. And that used to happen a lot because they look dead, And they'd bury him, and then they weren't dead. And sometimes, for some reason or other, they have to excavate the coffin, and they find all these scratch marks in it, from and broken nails from people. Anyway, they used to put these, sometimes they would put a rope inside the coffin that came out from the ground, and above the earth there was a little bell. And if you were in the coffin and you woke up, you'd pull it, hoping somebody would hear it, and they'd come and dig you out. Yeah, dead ringer.
Just in case you're alive?
What?
Just in case
Just in case you're alive. And, like people hang around the graveyard, right? Probably you're ringing and ringing, nobody ever heard you anyway, and you just die. And, that kind of thing. You're in your bed at night with the covers up and and then what are you going to do? Like a general, what can you do? And I'm thinking, would I really be able to surrender and just be peaceful in my bhajan? Okay, all I can do is chant now. It's up to the Lord. But he does that sometimes. So for me, I think, okay, he's making me experience this subtly so that I can develop that kind of sense of surrender, right? So that's what I try to contemplate at those times. Because it happens a lot. And I figure this is, all right, this is somehow or other, this is something to spur me on into a deeper sense of surrender. And then I'll just lie there and think, okay, I'm in the coffin or I'm in whatever it is, bound up with duct tape, and and could I really just surrender? And I just, okay, Hare Krishna, whatever you want, Lord, Hare Krishna. Sometimes it works. And sometimes I just go, throw off the covers and get up and start walking around. I know I'm a long way to go, Anyway, what a thing to leave on a class, Anyway, do you ever think like that? You're not alone. Okay. But the Gajendra happened to him, swimming in the river. You go to Australia, all of a sudden some giant saltwater croc. And could you, at that moment, remember the Lord and surrender? That dragging you under to drown you, stuff you under a log, and let you ripen a little bit and come to eat you later? This world's a terrible place. Terrible place. So, I'm going to offer obeisance to Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev, all of our acharyas, and strive for that anandam buddhivardhanam, right? Ever-increasing bliss and joy at every step. We're going to hear more of these evidences tomorrow. So, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai, all the assembled devotees ki jai. Oh my God. Should make a short out of this one, right? Probably be pretty popular. Gaur Premanande, Haribol, Haribol.